This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, other ho there. It's Jeff Gardabby. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, March the 26th, is an NFL player. He still is playing. He's playing for the Buffalo Bills right now. Anyway, this guy played college football for Texas A&M. He was selected by Denver in the 2011 draft. He's a Denver icon for what he did for the 2016 season, and he even won a Super Bowl ring with the LA Rams, spending only one season with the Rams, and now he's a Buffalo Bill. He's still playing. He's 34 years old. Well, 34. That's a nice career. He is Von Miller. So Von Miller was born in Dallas, and he was a four-star recruit. Florida, LSU, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech all lost out on him. So he went to Texas A&M. He would play for A&M and do pretty well for himself. Anyway, Von Miller had a habit of skipping class and failing to produce during practice. And he was actually suspended for spring practices and almost transferred. But then after realizing things, he decided to stay and have a more serious attitude. He became a weak side linebacker in the 4-3 defense. And he was actually more confined to pass coverage instead of rushing the quarterback. Well, anyway, he became a jack position, a hybrid of a defensive end and a linebacker, so that he could do his pass rushing abilities, and it worked out. He led the nation in sacks with 17, so still good. He became the first A&M player in a decade to be named first-team All-American. And then Miller became a 3-4 outside linebacker and did pretty well for himself. He actually graduated in a degree in poultry science. So yeah, for A&M, he was a sacks machine. And all that. Von Miller could have been a second-round pick if he had passed on his senior season, but he did not. He decided to go for it one more time for A&M. And he worked out pretty well for himself. So it's the 2011 NFL Draft. And Carolina was first on the clock. And everyone knew that they were going to go after Cam Newton because, Cam Newton was the Heisman winner and he led Auburn to a national title. Denver was next on the clock. And instead of picking someone like A.J. Green or Patrick Peterson or even Julio Jones, they decided to go with linebacker. They decided to go with Von Miller from A&M. So he was picked second overall, the highest pick for a linebacker since LeVar Arrington went number 2 in Washington in 2000. And would also be like Quinton Coryat of Texas A&M, who was selected second overall in 92, but didn't pan out that well for the Colts. A lot of people were shocked because Denver went from a 3-4 defense to a 4-3. But Miller was a guy who came around every 10 years. Von Miller signed his rookie contract in 2011 and wore number 58 in honor of Doug Thomas. He actually, in his first play from scrimmage, forced a fumble against the Raiders. And his first sack ever was against Andy Dalton in the Bengals. Somehow, in some way, Denver ended up winning the AFC West and got to host the wildcard game against Pittsburgh. Miller made 3 solo tackles, and Denver won in overtime 29-23. Although they would lose to the Pats in the divisional round. But he was named AP Defensive Rookie of the Year. He looked pretty good and all that. But anyway, Miller got to a quick start in his second season. 10 sacks in 9 games, which is pretty good and all that. He did hit 18.5 sacks, which was third in the NFL. And would break Denver's mark set by Amos Dumaville. He would finish second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Why he wasn't number 1, I don't know. Anyway, so Miller tried his best, and Denver got shocked by Baltimore in the division round. But anyway, he teamed up with Ubisoft to create his own sack celebration dance called the DeSoto Shuffle, inspired by the video game. And then each time he get to perform the dance during the game, Ubisoft would make a charitable donation to Fawn's vision, a foundation providing hiker glasses to underprivileged youth. Von Miller was suspended for 6 games in the 2013 season for trying to cheat a drug test. Unfortunately, though, he ended up suffering an ACL injury in late December and was out for the rest of the year. But that was huge because Denver didn't have Von Miller, and they got to the Super Bowl but lost to the Seahawks 43-8. Von Miller probably would have made a better difference for the Broncos. But anyway, he came back with the Broncos for the 2014 season and did decently. 2015 is when the Broncos came forward in that. Miller got 50 career sacks in 58 games. Only Reggie White and Derek Thomas beat him to it. Well, he got 11 sacks. And in the AFC title game against the Patriots, he sacked Tom Brady 2.5 times, making it the most sacks by a Broncos player in a postseason game. Anyway, in Super Bowl 50, facing the Panthers, the Broncos won that 124-10. It was huge. The top defense against the top offense. All that. Von Miller made a key play knocking the ball out of Cam Newton's hand while sacking him in the first quarter, which meant that it was free, and Denver's Malik Jackson recovered it for a touchdown. It was the first fumble return touchdown since Super Bowl 28 back in 1994. Anyway, Vaughn forced a second fumble from Newton to seal the Broncos' drive. All that. So overall, in that game, he had 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 quarterback hurries, and was named Super Bowl MVP. Who else would have been? But anyway, Von Miller was a hero. And the Broncos would place the franchise tag on him, which meant he had a 1-year deal. But then they signed him to a 6-year, $114 million deal, which made him the highest paid defensive player in NFL history. So anyway, he did get 13.5 sacks in his season, even though he didn't get any in the last 4 games. He was still pretty good at all that, with his sacks and all that. In 2018, he became the 5th fastest to get to 100 career sacks. Anyway, Miller looked pretty impressive for himself. Unfortunately, he would have a freak injury near the ankle during the 2020 COVID season. So he had a dislocated peroneal tendon. It was out for the year. Anyway, the Broncos would exercise the option in his contract, meaning he was still a Bronco, and he picked up 4.5 sacks in 6 games. But unfortunately, he hurt himself against the Browns October 21st, and that was the last time he was a Bronco. However, at the NFL trade deadline, and yes, the NFL does have a trade deadline, November 1st, 2021, the Rams picked him up from the Broncos for 2nd and 3rd round picks in the 2022 draft. Anyway, Miller was not too happy about that, being traded from Denver to the Rams. He says he loves Broncos country. When I said Broncos for life, I meant that. And Miller wore number 40. Well, his 58 was taken, so he had to wear so he chose to wear number 40 for the Rams because that was his number at Texas A&M. Even number 40 was kind of retired for Elroy Hirsch for the Rams franchise, but it didn't matter. In his debut, he made 3 tackles against the Niners. He looked pretty good and all that in his 15 games between the Broncos and the Rams. And yes, he was a Super Bowl champion after the Rams won Super Bowl 56, 23-20. He got 2 sacks in the game. In fact, he's the 2nd player to ever have multiple Super Bowl games with multiple sacks. Like 2 or more sacks in 2 or more Super Bowls. The only other guy, Justin Tuck of the Giants. Anyway, he put up 4.5 sacks, tying Charles Haley's mark for most Super Bowl sacks. And then after the Rams season, they let him go, so he signed a 6-year deal with the Bills. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL in the Thanksgiving Day game against the Lions. So hopefully he'll recover. So anyway, in 161 career games with the Broncos, Rams, and Bills, he has played. He has 123.5 sacks, which is pretty good, with 24 interceptions. In the postseason, he has 10.5 sacks, with 1 interception. He holds Broncos franchise record. He holds career sacks by Bronco, 110.5. Single season, 18.5 in 2012. Playoff career, 6.5. Single playoff season, 5 back in 2015, and 2.5 in a single game, twice. He has most sacks in the Super Bowl with 4.5, tied in with Charles Haley. So, anyway, he does what he does. All that. So anyway, he part of Fawn's vision for glasses for underprivileged youth and all that. So anyway, Fawn Miller was actually referenced in the season 20 episode Oh Geez. When Gerald Broflovsky goes to Denmark under the aliens, a professor for Fawn Miller. The show pays reference to the Broncos because it is in Colorado. All that. He was part of Dancing with the Stars in season 22 and took 8. And in Celebrity Wheel of Fortune, he won $30,000. So, yeah, so Von Miller is a Broncos legend for what he did in Super Bowl 50, knocking off the 15-1 Carolina Panthers. So, that's good for him and good enough for me. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.